This is the infrastructure of white criminality that Du Bois is pointing to, and yet there's no spokespersons associating that with their race. Now, there were, and there will continue to be in terms of eugenic projects. So this gets a little bit complicated. The social Darwinists and eugenics turn to white criminality as evidence of the degraded whites who are polluting the Nordic stock of America. Du Bois is not concerned with that group of people. He's concerned with the progressives. He's concerned with the Hoffmans. And what he sees among them is a double standard when it comes to how black people's criminality is explained and compared to white. Because he sees shared behavior. He sees black thieves, black robbers, black murderers, and white counterparts. But he hears nothing of the condemnation of them as a race of people. And a cartoon that is published in the Crisis that he edits makes this point. It's June 1913. By this time, Du Bois is the editor of the Crisis. He's not the author of this cartoon, the illustrator, but American logic. So here are your white people. Now, I like to say in this illustration that this guy and this guy are our saggers. They're sagging in 1913. That's what the clothing is meant to indicate. People who are untrustworthy just on physical appearance by the clothing that they wear. So on this side it says, the caption reads, this man is not responsible for this man even if they do belong to this. There's no racialization of the white male criminal. It's Du Bois's point, or the Crisis magazine's point. And then on the right side, this man is responsible for all that this man does because they do belong to the same race. We, of course, do the same thing. White people have no moral accountability for other things that white people do. Pastors may be of their congregation, and a few other collectivist white folks may care about the white masses. But by and large, the culture is not predicated on ascribing guilt or shame on something. Now, it does take credit for all the wonderful things that white folks do. Only have to visit the Metropolitan or MoMA or the Library of Congress for that matter. But by the same token, not only do whites ascribe to individual blacks a commentary, a reflection of other black people, but black people embrace that too. They embrace it. When someone else does something, it tarnishes me. So this is when this is being called out 100 years ago, 1913, and we've done nothing different. We've not moved in any direction. We live in exactly the same moment with regard to these issues. Because our commitment to studying this, both historically and as a contemporary problem, have not kept pace with the damage done by this. I edited the Journal of American History, and I can tell you very clearly that the Journal of American History is only now coming into a full appreciation of the history of criminal justice in this country. Historians have not been actively engaged in these questions, other than as they pertain to lynching. All right. The best example I could conclude with is, what does it look like from a progressive's point of view? You've taken as a given all of these nice things that I said about helping out white criminals and European immigrants. You've taken at my word that progressives did have a vision of them that was sympathetic, that was a reflection of society. Well, this is just one example of it. So here in this example, you have an organization called Central Howard Association, which in today's parlance would be a prisoner reentry organization. And its clients were white men located in Chicago. And this illustration comes from an annual report, which was used to report back to funders and to generate new funding opportunities. Same as today. Okay, but let's look at it. This is about white people. And what are they saying? What are the people who are trying to show compassion towards white people saying about, as they say, how criminals are made, and what are they showing us is the problem? So here's the problem, here's the analysis, and helping this organization is the solution. Got it? Because we often talk about what is the solution, giving us all of this analysis, which is another way of encouraging historical illiteracy. People don't want to study anything. Well, just tell us what we should do. I mean, you don't tell the oncologist that when he's a third-year medical student, right? You don't say to the oncologist, oh, why are you studying? Give us the solution to cancer. Right? But for this, so when we buy into that, when we say we shouldn't study that, we shouldn't, why are we talking about the problem? Why don't we talk about the solution? Why talk? It is a reactive impulse that is actually a very old, it was Booker T. Washington's way of doing it. Let's not talk, let's get to work. Let's work. No, it sounds good, but it's true. So, Booker T. Washington went down in history opposing classical education. He went down in history opposing thoughtful reflection. Now, to be most generous to him, one could say what he was really saying is that everyone wasn't going to be a PhD one day. So let's make sure that those who aren't going to be PhDs have a good job. I can live with that. But he is on the record opposing classically trained black folks. And Du Bois, to his credit, never said that everyone was going to be a member of the talented 10 or going to have a PhD. So what were they really fighting over? Well, Booker T. Washington's politics dictated that he had to reject classical education because his supporters opposed black people getting PhDs. And so his public politics was a rejection of that, which is what infuriated Du Bois. Because Booker T. Washington, quiet as it kept, wanted Du Bois to be part of Tuskegee until white folks' money got in the way. And things changed. Okay, so what do you see here? I love this example. In the interest of time, I'm just going to tell you what I see, unless somebody wants to throw something out there. What do you see? Somebody, anybody. In light of our conversation, let's talk about Southside Chicago. Let's talk about Inglewood. Let's talk about Detroit. What do you see? You see the hood. What else do you see? Neglectful parents. How do you know there's a neglectful parent?
Because she's got a whole bunch of kids in her arms and next to her and can't handle the kids in the street.
Too many damn kids, right? Poor family planning. Does she have a husband? Not apparently. We're not entirely sure because there is this other guy in the picture. And what's going on with him? Getting arrested. Right? So the proximity of police action, we don't know if he's innocent. All we know is it's disorderly. There's a cop manhandling a guy going down the street. What else do we see that resonates with Chalmers and
two kids fighting one another?
Two kids, so are they, are these the kind of kids that we want to invite over for a play day? Or are these the kind of kids that we see, in the middle of the street and we turn the other way? What else do you see? Dilapidation, right? So we see the face of poverty. And quiet as it's kept, poverty is associated with immorality in this country to this day. Your poverty, contrary to every mythology that our political leaders and cultural leaders articulate about who we are as Americans, if you are poor, you are suspect. Your morality is in question. So we've got poor. What else do we see? I'd say the only other thing that you can obviously see is that this woman is a washerwoman, which is a category of work, ironically enough, that becomes almost singularly black over the course of the 20th century. This is actually a moment of transition in 1907. So the face of inner city poverty is not a black face in this moment, or in this depiction of what's going on in Chicago. You've got a potentially single mother with a whole bunch of fatherless children. She can't control them. There's juvenile delinquency. There's necessity for police action in the community. Her home is falling apart. She's in an occupational category that is degraded. And what you can't see, like the crack house of the 90s or marijuana today, is the saloon, which is right here. So, okay, we put our postmodernist, close reading hats on and analyze the visual text. Well, let's see what they actually said. How criminals are made. So long as there are bad tenements, sweatshops, brutal policemen, bad jails, child labor, dishonest and grinding employers, saloons and gambling dens, so long as boys are taught to fight and allowed to carry firearms, so long as fathers are indifferent deserters and mothers must maintain the family by the washboard, so long crime will continue. What will will you do to help this association to prevent it? Where is the politics of personal responsibility in that? Where is the religion and education won't fix this? Where is the illegitimacy number? Where is the statistics? Wait a minute. I don't see a single statistic. There's no discourse of statistics. There's no discourse of cultural pathology. These are explicit references. The only thing that we come closest to this is fathers as indifferent deserters. But by and large, we're talking about an oppressive police state. We're talking about the face of poverty is bad. We're talking about dishonest and grinding employers. Could you imagine a critique today of corporate America having anything to do with what's going on in the hood? Of the exploitation of people who do have jobs is somehow reflective of what's going on in their families or on their streets or in their blocks or in their neighborhoods? How could this be happening at the same moment where Jim Crow is building this self-reinforcing mythology that black people are dangerous and should be contained and that should be under racial surveillance? How could this happen? And what makes this moment any different today? Why don't we have the same lens, how criminals are made, and the same critique of society by filling in, if you took like a child, a brown crayon and colored in all the faces? How many of you sit here right now thinking that this is the same analysis that we hear in our daily political discourse and media discourse about this scene in Detroit or Chicago or Philadelphia or New York? The mayor of New York at every turn gets up and defends a criminal justice policy that ensures that as many black and brown folks in New York will be under surveillance by the NYPD, period. I don't care what your status is. You are being watched. And it's not because there are bad tenements, sweatshops, brutal policemen, child labor, dishonest and grinding employers. It's because black people commit lots of crime. But the point is this community was producing a lot of crime. And the point was not to criminalize the community. All right. This is what a real picture of those same communities look like. I like to use this slide to show, and I'm not going to give you the full workup on this, but this is Philadelphia, same time period. These are progressives helping impoverished people. But what I want you to see is, which one is the Italian? Which one is the Irish? How about the Russian Jew, the Polish Catholic? Can you tell? Come on. Can't tell. You're not supposed to know. Because they are Americans in the making. Because they are people we need to help. The funders in this annual report need to know that these are our future. These are our precious kids. We have to care about them. Against the tide of anti-immigrant nativism that is actually going to win a major battle by closing the borders to Southern and Eastern Europeans 20 years after this. They are working against that by deracializing these people. All they want you to know is that these are cute kids who are poor because none of them have on a stitch of cloth on their feet. And so having shoes was a sign of some stability in one's life. Well, what did they make of black folks in Philadelphia? Same organization. One of our new neighbors, same organization, racialized. The point was for us not to de-racialize this kid as an impoverished kid growing up in Philadelphia, deserving of the same opportunities that were being extended to those white immigrants. But in fact, now here's where it gets tricky, because they are helping this kid. But it is predicated on his race making him different. In the same way that Hoffman wanted us to understand that the crime of the black man or woman was different from the Irish or the Italian. His prescription was punitive. Their prescription was still progressive, but it did not further the cause of ending American logic. Because here we are attaching this person to ethnic stereotype. Now this is straight up a public-private That's like the children's